Hello and welcome to another BuildASoil YouTube video. Today we've got our FAQ number 1 for season 8, and it's been a long time coming. We haven't done the FAQ videos, and a lot of it is because Dean used to do the video editing, and he's moved out of the country. He did it remotely for a while, but at the end of the day, he used to procure the FAQ questions for me. He'd Slack them to the team, they'd print it out, and then it would come on my desk and they'd put it upside down or face down on my desk. Because for the FAQs, the whole point of it is for me to go through and answer real viewers' questions from the YouTube and do it as candid as possible so I'm not prepared. I think that it provides the most honest answer, and if I don't know it, we move on, and it's worked pretty well. So what I did to reinvigorate this, I really think that the frequently asked questions are one of the best ways we can all learn together is in that dialogue instead of me just talking at the camera. I didn't want to look at the questions. And so I could either task my team with extra work and having them go through and pick them out. And then, you know, when you're a little more connected, it's kind of hard to pick questions. You feel emotionally involved. And so to remove all of that, I went to ChatGPT, dropped in from YouTube Studio a copy and paste of every question from season 8 so far for the 10x10. And I said, hey, peel off the first 20 verbatim with the viewers' names so that I can give them credit for asking the question, and let's just get after it. And so in that way, I'm hoping to answer every single question that comes off as a question. I'll mention a few of the comments, and if this format's work, then I'm gonna keep doing it, and I'll do as many as I can at a time. Another part of me wants to do maybe one question videos where I go deeper into the one question or keep it short. And I think the reason for this is that myself, when I'm learning something, I usually ask the question. And I'm going to make sure that Lance, who's doing our editing, does a good job of putting every question with a timestamp on it so that when we get to that point, at least you can go through and find the question. But my fear is that if I do 20 questions at a time or 10 at a time, somebody who really needs the information may not be able to search it in YouTube very well and get their answer as succinctly as possible. I tend to ramble. So let me know, give me some feedback. If you're watching this, would you like to see one question videos and more of them so that if you're new, you can find that one question and get an answer? Or do you like the 10, 20 questions at a time? Today's 20 questions. I don't know how far I'm gonna get, how long it's gonna take. I've got a cup of coffee so I don't get cotton mouth, and I'm just gonna get started. So as per usual, I'm gonna grab the paper because ChatGPT did it. I have no clue what's gonna show up. It could be kind of random, so we'll have some fun together. And let's get started. Lighting and spectrum, question 1, at TimPage5021. Thank you for asking your question. It says, 2700K is the HPS spectrum, but honestly, it's minimal difference between the 3600K modern LEDs emit. I think you're making a mistake using the HPS spectrum for GMO. It's already a tall, stretching plant, and all that unnecessary red is really going to make them scraggly. I've been running GMO into the Mammoth Evo mints, and man, it's such an impressive improvement. No foxtails, minimal stretch. The nutrients don't have to go as far to swell the buds. Interesting you mentioned that, because this is probably from one of the first videos where I was trying to explain what I was doing, and I think we got our paths crossed there, because we're not mimicking the HPS, we're doing the opposite. And obviously the videos have come out, so now you can see this. But we were going for very high blue, cool white. So probably like, I don't know the K, probably 6,000 K or something. I'd have to look it up. It's still full spectrum, but it was blue dominant for the exact reason you mentioned. We were trying to keep the stretch down on the GMO. And I used to run metal halide and HPS, and I would do a blend across a tent or a room. And I've definitely flowered and vegged under metal halide all the way through and seen what it can do. I've also had a 4x8 LED grow tent at home where I had a 3000K on one side and a 3500K on the other side. And I planted probably 5 packs of seeds. So we're talking like 50 plants across this thing. And across the board, across different packs, the ones under the 3500K were a lot squattier than the ones under the 3000K that stretched into the light. Both produced really good results. It was just such a difference. Rate cut down the middle in the tent. In fact, one of the packs that I popped was like 5 seeds on the left side of the tent, right in the center of a 4x8 bed, and 5 seeds on the right. They both got a little overlap, but even those had differences in height. So I knew something would happen. That's why we decided to run with it. The other thing in my mind is I want to see stuff that I want to see. I want to share stuff that you're probably interested in, meaning I was curious about the spectrum tuning and I wrote it off for a long time as unnecessary extra, but I'm having a blast doing it. And so if the price was the same for a spectrum tuner versus a non-spectrum tuner, price being the same, spectrum tuning is really fun. And I can see some benefit to squatting out plants with the blue, at least a little bit, stretching them with the red, like you indicated. Maybe people have mentioned some of these Afghans, broadleaf, that really don't stretch that much, eliciting some more stretch out of them. An autoflower that you're limited on time and you want it to get as big as possible. So I see future tests maybe coming down the line if this becomes interesting. Otherwise, to your last point about the Mammoth Evo, I've not run it. However, we're actually comparing against a Cypress Evo with the Mints. And I think it's got even more green than the Mammoth. I'm not positive. But putting all the latest tech into that light was part of why we chose the Cypress. I don't believe we're going to continue carrying the Cypress into the future, as I don't want to be a lighting company. I'm not trying to import them. When the owner of what was Timber and became High Grove and all that throughout the times was managing it all for me, I was stoked. Since then, they've been sent to our factory here, and then we ship them out. And I don't like keeping tens of thousands of dollars of light in stock. It's caused problems in the past, and technology changes quickly. So I would prefer to just work with any lighting company that has the best. And so far, I'm having a really good time with Thomas at Grandmaster. We have drop shipped a couple lights. We're probably going to add the spectrum tuner to our website, but like, there's this much margin in there to the point where it's almost pointless for us to do it. It's purely about the education and fun here. And I hope you guys are having fun watching it. So great comments, Tim Page. The light can mimic HPS better than others, and people were interested in that. That's not what we're doing. After we did the blue, for the first 3 weeks of stretch, you can watch the videos now, we did add back more red in. And so we're not trying to keep it exclusive. I was just trying to manage the height and then switch. Question number 2, at Patrick G2781. Thank you for asking the question. I got heavy foxtail with my GML Vulcan Nitro. Should I adjust the far red while flowering? Someone can recommend me some lecture about all that. You know, that's a good question. I think when we are spectrum tuning, obviously it can give us more control, and that could be a bad thing if we don't know how to drive the car. And so I've been learning. I don't have these answers, but I will tell you things that I understand slightly. When the sun is going overhead and it goes to noon and then it goes through the side, obviously there's differences in atmosphere that it's going to go through, and it changes the color of light throughout the day, not just throughout a grow. And the other thing that you can find is that spectrums are going to be different when it gets shaded versus when it's not. And so I believe there's more red spectrum. Like if you go deep into the ocean and you're on a submarine, let's say, or you're scuba diving, the color of the fish from the top where the light can easily show the color versus the color of the fish 50, 100 feet under the ocean where the sunlight is being filtered, you start to see certain colors go away first. And I don't know if it's blue or if it's red or how that works, but I'd imagine it's very similar to how plants filter. So when you have let's say you're trying to grow a plant and it's crowded out by others and it needs to shoot up in height, that's going to be more of a red spectrum once it's filtered by the plants versus when it's directly being hit by the sun. And so I do believe that lowering that red in your custom spectrum tuner light could absolutely affect the foxtailing. What that means is you should definitely play with that. And if you're seeing foxtailing, a lot of that is genetic, but we can elicit a different phenotypic response from the genotype by using different light, similar to how growing it at the top of a mountain versus next to an ocean would probably result in different outcome as far as the structure, maybe even other things like terpenes. But I think it's interesting. I'm having fun with it. I don't know how to tell you what to do, but for sure it seems like that far red could be reduced. In fact, I'd try a run on that strain without it, see how it does. And then you could dial it back in. Of course, this all takes time. So that's part of why I want to have these experiment tents and see if I can learn together and you can apply the results instead of having to do several months of testing at a time. Great question. Question 3, Arizona Grows, at Arizona Grows. Thanks for asking a question. I wonder if you could add just a small blue spectrum light to the other side and achieve the same thing at a much lower price point. I was thinking the same thing, meaning let's say you go get like some blue strips from Grandmaster or from whoever offers them and throw them onto your light, and now you have increased blue. I think it's actually the lack of red and therefore the increase of blue that causes it, but I could be wrong. And so I think time will tell. Ultimately, it'd be really nice if the cost of spectrum tuning and the multiple drivers was figured out so that we could do this on any light. But in the future, maybe we'll decide it's not necessary. What do you guys think? I'm having fun with it. I don't know ultimately depending on the price difference, if I would leap for it or not as a new grower. But as an experienced grower, when you're doing this a lot and maybe you're looking for a new light, a few $100 difference versus what it creates for you in your life that you're saving money on is fairly negligible. And a lot of times people that are passionate about a hobby, they'll spend silly money on stuff because they need to experience it. For instance, I play disc golf. My wife and I just competed in a tournament this past weekend, 3 rounds. Every time I go, I want to buy all the plastic there is. And when you're an amateur, all you win is funny money. You end up buying all these discs, and literally sometimes they fuck up your game, but they're so fun to try the new shapes and to throw them and see the difference in flight. And every once in a while, you'll literally unlock something, a disc that changes your entire game that you don't know how you ever played without. And it's through that searching that you find these opportunities. And so I think it's worth it. I'm having fun. So yes, could you add blue? I don't know. I do think it's removing the red more that would be of benefit for the stretch and then increasing the blue, not just adding blue, but it might help. So worth trying. And there's also people in here that are watching this that have experimented. I'm hoping they'll chime in here from their real world experience. Okay, next question number 4, at Ray Vitamontes 3432. Thanks for asking your question. I would like to see you guys compare the winner to Mammoth lighting. Maybe we can do that. I'm sure Thomas at Grandmaster would fucking love that. This is why I mentioned I don't want to be in the lighting game. I'm a soil guy. And so it's more fun for me to, I want to share what we find works and who I think is good customer service, good product and all of that. But within the lighting world, it's kind of fun for me to be like, well, how do we compare them, right? And so I'd totally be open to that. Who knows what the next test will be in the side-by-side. That could be fun. In fact, I got more room here. We could probably even throw more tents up and do more side-by-sides if you really want to see that stuff on just a single variable. I feel like it's pretty easy to do once we get automatic watering, get the same clone and just go for it. So I'm totally open to it if more people chime in. Okay, here's another one. Question number 5 at Chuckles86. Thank you for posting up in here. Need a FloraFlex versus side-by-side. I love mine. Interested to see if it hits like the high price lights. I've had great results. They're really good for the price. FloraFlex, in fact, I've got a reply to them today. We have 2 pallets of lights here that they want to sue us over because they were selling well. We kept ordering them. They give them to you on terms so that you can sell through them before you order your next one. And they're a really well-run company. I like the lights, but other people online are now selling them for well below the retail price as a loss leader to attract customers, which is something big businesses do, or those that are well-financed. And we're just a small family business. Any extra money I place into an investment of inventory comes out of our cash flow. We don't borrow money to get it. And that can negatively affect our operations here if we just start adding new product after new product. And the FloraFlex lights, after the online people maybe caught our videos, who knows? They started just dumping the price on them to the point where you can go buy them for significantly less than I can afford to sell it. So FloraFlex is pissed. I told them to come get their fucking lights and it hasn't happened. So we'll see, but I'm going to try my best to be amicable. I'm going to reach out to them today via email, tell them I'd like to talk to them on the phone and either have them just come get the lights or allow us to sell them at a cheaper price. My whole goal was maybe that they'd reach out to the other online suppliers and mandate their minimum advertised pricing so that we could still offer the light without losing money. And that didn't happen. And so it kind of pissed me off. Anyways, the quality of the light's still rad, so I can't really talk shit on it. It is kind of what it is. But I thought I'd mention it because not everybody knows what goes on behind the scenes, and other people do sell them. So I don't know if we're gonna do a FloraFlex side-by-side, mainly because they piss me off. For the good of the community, if it was really wanted and because we have offered them, it might be something worthwhile in the future. All right. We're on to the next section now. So that's the first 5 questions. Let's pepper in a nice comment worth reading on air. GPT says this is good for social proof. If you can't tell, I'm the marketing department. So nice comments at RefundBucks9432. Thank you for dropping a nice comment. I really appreciate it. There isn't a better channel on YouTube. You're officially the king of this shit. You need 1 million subs. Fuck yeah, that would be awesome to have 1 million subs. We can't monetize it through YouTube, so it wouldn't mean much, but to me, it would mean the world that 1 million people actually cared enough to watch my rants. Thank you for dropping a nice comment. I really appreciate it. Okay, let's go on to environment, DLI, and tent setup questions that are from the first few videos that were loaded up here. All right, so question 6 at Rudog3484. Thank you for asking a question. Says, when I upgraded my light, I can't keep my temps down below 84 without lowering my PPFD and DLI below my target. The lung room is usually around 72 to 74. Anyone have any tips or ideas? I've just kind of accepted at this point, but I go for 80 or below, my exhaust just stays on constantly. VPD has been adjusted to higher temp, maybe it's just fine. Okay, good question. It's great. This is what you want. Now, here's the problem. If you can't match VPD, you must go off the weakest link. The weakest link would be too much light, bad VPD. It stresses the plant because you're driving it like you're running a marathon in a desert. You just can't keep up with drinking the water and all of the sun. Now, I know there's some badasses that do that, and so there's some genetics that can probably hang, but for the most part, if you have a good VPD, for those of you that don't know, that's the vapor pressure deficit. It essentially means good temperature and humidity combined that a plant can really be happy in because the humidity is high and it doesn't have to constantly move water. You know, when its stomata's open, when all the little pores are breathing and it's growing during the day, this allows the light to evaporate the water. And if it happens too quickly, it can stress the plant out. And so essentially, RootDog is saying, I got a badass light, I want to run it, but it's causing my temps to go too high and it's making the exhaust go crazy, which means now I have to add humidity to keep up with it. If you can keep it up and you can keep the VPD going and you can raise the temp, you're actually increasing the metabolism of the plant. You're increasing that transpiration. You're driving the plant as fast as you can go at a higher temperature, and I think it's good. And part of what I mean by that is when we grew under HPSs, or if you're under the sun, you can feel that radiant warmth. You feel it. I think it's something big that's lacking from the LED is there's very little radiant energy. It's all light, and then the rest of the heat is passively removed from the top. It's not projected down onto the plants. And when I go to the beach, I like that feeling. It feels like it's a necessary part of life to receive that light. I mean, everything's light, right? And so it makes sense. I think plants are in the same boat. And so when you start to raise the temperature up and have that light good, as long as all other things are good, I think you're gonna crush it. It's gonna act warmer on the leaf as if it was in a cooler room being heated by the radiant energy. So if we were under HPS and you had a 75-degree tent, your leaf surface temp might be 80. So I would encourage you, look at your leaf surface temperature of your grow. I bet you it's lower than you think. And I would say you're probably fine up to 90 degrees running in that flower room. However, towards the end, once the stack is done, once the swell is good, I would like to see temperatures drop. What's most important, in my opinion, is when you're deeper in flower, you're gonna be lowering the VPD because you don't wanna be too high in humidity and you don't wanna cause bud rot. So you wanna be like 50% or below. At that point, the increased temperature may be a little much because we've passed that window where it really needs that energy to stretch and stack and everything. Now we're just kind of swelling and finishing. And I would say you can lower your PPFD so it lowers your temps and you can kind of ride out that finish as if it's a cooler season like would normally happen in nature. In fact, a lot of times what I do is I'll lower the DLI by reducing the 12 hours of on to 11 hours. I just feel like I don't miss much for that 1 extra hour of light, and if some plants are borderline, it'll finish them off a little bit faster. So I think you're fine. Double check your parameters, but leaf surface temp and warmer room with an LED is totally fine. Question 7. At Dale Lane 2025, what is the height of your SCROG and how highest can you go? Laugh out loud. Oh, how height can you go? He's fucking making fun of me and I didn't even catch it. All right, Dale Lane. If you didn't catch it, what he's referencing is someone commented and said that when I said height, I actually said height. And I didn't realize I was making the mistake, and it took one of you guys to teach me. And so now I'm very cognizant of the fact I say height, and I've stopped and I say height. And I think I'm doing pretty good. So that's funny. I would have to go measure it, and I have no idea. But I think you're just fucking with me. I did do a video, it came up probably after these questions, but what I like to do is split the tent into thirds. And I like to have my first SCROG layer at the 1/3 mark. That way I have 2/3 left for stretch where the lights can still have a distance. With the GMO, I tend to kind of just smash into the light no matter what. With these new strips, it seems to be okay, but honestly, I'd rather be 6 inches to 12 inches away no matter what, so I could drive the light just a little more, but I honestly think it's gonna do pretty well. So like if the light's further away, down deeper is gonna be weaker. When the lights are close up top, I need to dim just a bit, but it works. It still works. I don't know what it is, but that's my height thing. Okay, number 8, Loose Arrow 303. Thank you for asking a question. He says, I have a bed, a 4x4 bed. I've had several runs through. It's been sitting for about a year unused, and I'm gonna get it going today. Anything specific I can amend with, cover crop to help reset it to baseline? I'm trying to skip getting soil samples if possible and just start up again. The bed is full of 3.0 FYI. Oof, good question. I wish I had done this sooner because it might have helped you. Now it's probably way too late. But in the BuildASoil Way fundamental book that I'm going to be releasing next year, I have a whole section dedicated on re-amending your soil because I realize many people are worried about it. They ask questions about it. I did do a season, I forget which one, in the YouTube series, where I re-amended 2 ways. You can Google that. One of them was with a Logan Lab soil test, and I actually sent it off to Bryant Mason, the soil doctor, and I applied everything he said to the gram. And then I did another one where I just did the fundamental BuildASoil Way. When you know you have good in, you get good out. We're not wildly guessing, right? We're putting in what I think is a good prescription in general. They both crushed. So I don't think you need the soil test when you're starting with a pretty good base. New farm, yeah, let's test the soil. A lot of money on the line, fresh potting soil. Let's test it. Let's see if it matches. A home garden, put a plant in, tell you what it's doing, a trusted company, second round. We can go with, I think, a prescription rather than having to go get an actual soil test. And so in the book, I'm putting a table down that breaks down the math, as I've realized many people are uncomfortable with the math because they're worried that if they get it wrong, it's gonna fuck something up, and they just aren't as familiar. And so I made a table where it says, 10, 15, 20 gallon, 30 gallon, how much craft blend to add, how much compost to add. But the general principle is that we wanna add some sort of all-purpose amendment, a complete organic fertilizer, which we teach you to make. Steve Solomon taught me in his book, The Intelligent Gardener, and we made our craft blend based on that. The complete organic fertilizer is basically some sort of nitrogen source that's clean, like some seed meals. And then you add to that calcium source, like gypsum and oyster shell. We like to do a diverse source. And to that, some sort of phosphorus source. And lastly, if you want some sort of micronutrient. And so when you have the NPK from the seed meal, the increased P and K from adding these phosphorus sources, along with the organic waste that usually provides potassium, and then we load it with calcium and a few micronutrients, it just works. It keeps the buffet full of what's important, and when it's not mixed in, it doesn't have to be perfect. So rule of thumb, in that video I explained, I like to go 6 inches down. So if it's a 4x4 bed, that's gonna be 16 cubic feet of soil, 12 inches, and only 8 cubic feet of soil when you go 6 inches. For every cubic foot, I like to re-amend about a cup of nutrients when I'm doing a big re-amend. And so that means that you could put 8 cups of craft blend for a big re-amend, or you could always cut it to 4 and then follow up later. And then on top of that, I like to spread a 1/4 inch layer of some good compost. I really like Cocoa worm castings. I love our Build-A-Flower, it's loaded. I love Seacoast compost, Malibu compost, something quality that you can trust, homemade, what you have access to. Just make sure you don't do fully blind on a local compost. Sometimes there can be some really big problems with just generic compost in a bag, so make sure it's somebody reputable. And that 4x4 bed, I promise, if you re-moisten it slowly, my biggest fear is dry pockets. And so you may want to do a nice slow watering with some sort of wetting agent and then wait a day. After that, do some digging in and see how you did. And you want to bring it to an optimal moisture level. The next thing I'd recommend to bring a 1-year-old stale bed to life would probably be, instead of putting the amendments in right away, let's put some cover crop down. Let's make sure the moisture is right, germinate the cover crop. After the cover crop's about 6 inches tall, maybe even a little bit shorter if you're in a hurry, chop and drop all of it and work in, tilth in that top 2 inches of soil. Add in your complete organic fertilizer like craft blend or what you have access to and put it on there. Add that 1/4 inch layer of compost, work it all in. You're gonna have a brand new bed. And because you're not mixing it in, the properties in this soil are likely to be very lean, not excess. And at the top where the feeder roots will go will likely be full of the nutrition that's needed, and your plant is gonna do really, really well. All right, let's see, question number 9. Scott in Sierras, 2945. Awesome, thank you for asking. I grew up, my dad lived in Tahoe, and it was one of my favorite places to visit, and we'd ski at the, Sierra Ski Ranch? Became Sierra at Tahoe later, I think. How do you control temps if your tent is closed? Controlling temps for a grower in a grow tent usually means worried about heat. If you notice on the previous person that asked a question here about this, they indicated their lung room was about 74 degrees and their tent was 84 degrees. This is pretty normal. I see this 10-degree temperature swing from an LED grow tent very often. A couple different things you can do. One is cool the room that the grow is in. It's an easy way to do it, solves most problems. Then you can exhaust the air. If humidity is an issue, you can then add humidity into the lung room. Now everything's solved. Then you can just control the temperatures. The other thing that's mostly gonna happen is if you get a light that has a remote ballast and allows you to move the entire driver that gets really hot outside of the tent. That can really reduce the amount of heat that's being produced and maybe lower that, instead of a 10-degree difference or 15 on the hottest days, maybe like a 5 to 10-degree difference. And that is a big benefit. The other thing is, less is more. You can really run a 600 PPFD flower and grow and slay it versus trying to go up to 1,000 and having massive amounts of excessive heat. The other thing is, make sure you know what excessive is. If you're below 90 degrees in your grow tent, you're probably killing it. When it comes to late flower, I do like to drop temps, but for the most part, where all the energy is being used, going up to 90 degrees, measuring the leaf surface temperature, probably in that 80 something, 84 degree range, it's fine. I think you're actually getting a benefit from being a little bit warmer. That being said, read the plants, make sure that you're being, using some intuition there when you work with them. If it's too hot, it's too hot. But I think a lot of times people are trying to keep it too cool based on how we used to use the lights that would push heat down to the leaf. It had to be cooler or the leaves would get really hot and burn. So the other thing is, some people literally add mini split air conditioners with tubing and pump them right into the grow tent. I know AC Infinity has some crazy contraption that does like heating, cooling, humidity, all that stuff. But they only let you sell, like buy one at a time, and they're never available, and so we can't sell them. But there's many ways. The way I used to do it before all the tech, okay, if you're listening, low tech, big check, a timer. So if you have an exhaust fan and you're like, oh man, exhaust fan on level 10, 100% of the time, it brings all my air out and it keeps the temps fine, but now it's really dry and it's sucking the tent walls in. You can get like a tensiometer, you can get a potentiometer, sorry. Basically a dimmer that will slow the speed of your fan down if you have an old fan. Most of the newer ones will dim, will lower in speed. And then if that's still not enough, where maybe now your temperatures are okay, but humidity is fluctuating, you can always put your fan on a timer so that at least it goes on every 15 minutes or so. So many low-tech ways that you can kind of mitigate concerns, but I'll revisit the BuildASoil principle that is the weakest link. It comes from holistic decision-making, Alan Savory, and in his book, it's worth watching some of the videos, but in any case, in his book, he mentions that holistic decision-making is all about that weakest link. And so if it's 110 degrees in your tent and you're thinking, who cares, I want bright light, everything else is great, the weakest link is that temp. And so it'd be better to reduce the light instead of keep the temp high. And I think that is worthwhile of thinking about while you're setting your grow up, the weakest link. All right, irrigation and soil, question 10, at ADK Scan, thanks for asking your question, says, does the 8mm blue mat tubing fit directly onto the Autopot tank spigot? I thought the Autopot spigot was a 1/2 inch. So the Autopot spigot that we get, that comes with the basic protocol, it comes with a, like instead of the quick connect big tubing, a lot of times the Autopot will connect right to their basically 8mm tubing that they use instead of to the large diameter tubing for running a big grow. So you can get an Autopot to set up on a large diameter tube to be the main line that you split off of for a number of Autopots. But most of us are running a few of them. We do not need that. You can just use one Autopot line directly off there, which means it works perfect with the Superflex tubing, and I love it. So our new blue mat systems, if you go to buildasoil.com and you go to shop, you can see the complete blue mat kit, or you can go to automatic watering and blue mats, or just search blue mat, BLUMAT. We have our new kits available and we have the whole walkthrough. And the way we do it is with an Autopot flexible reservoir or a do-it-yourself, but we don't do the double-sided reservoir for a small grow. I don't believe you need the equalized pressure. It's more for a larger grow, and I found it works really, really well. And that opens up the flexibility of using one of those inflatable pop-up reservoirs, which are really nice when it comes to trying to figure out where to put them and what size to get. There's lots of options, and we're going to keep doing that. So great question. Next nice comment was from @regulargrowerleaf. Leaf is spelled like Keef, I think. Kind of regular grower leaf. Like relief? Grow relief. I get it now. Okay, regular grow relief. Thank you for asking the question, or making a comment, I should say. He says, crazy. I got the Tarantula Explorer 2 months ago. You taught me how to grow, brother. Now we can learn a light together as well. Fuck yeah. Any tips for me that you've learned, please drop them in here. Thanks for posting a really good comment. All right, next question is number 11 at Michael Gleason 7zer. Michael Gleason SH7ZR. Jeremy, in your opinion, thank you for asking the question. Jeremy, in your opinion, how many plants would you put in an EarthBox? Wondering if putting 2 to 3 plants per box with a short veg cycle using feminized seeds would be too much for that amount of soil. Should I be prepared to add nutrients in the bottom watering cycle? Thank you for the awesome advice and content. Good question. I prefer 1. I've ran 2 many times, and I know people that have run 3 by keeping a non-existent veg and flipping. Ultimately, you're just producing a certain size canopy for the EarthBox, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 plants. It's all the same. It's about how big they get before you flip. Overdoing it's overdoing it. You can overdo it with 1 plant, just as easy as you can overdo it with 3. The nice thing about 3, your veg is done like day 1. It's already filled the EarthBox. You get to flip pretty quick. You get faster results. I'd probably try 2 and 3 and see what you like the best, but 2 is probably gonna work best. 1 is my favorite, but it is what it is. When you do the nutrients in the bottom, you don't have to. You can just mound the top dress for your 2 plants. I've done it a number of times. It works really well. That being said, if you're gonna use something, I know lots of people that do. They just wait until the plant is drinking pretty regularly, and they'll add their Organics Alive water-soluble organic nutrients. They'll add some ferments, and they kill it. So you can do that. I just don't teach it because I feel like there's more nuance there. And what I mean is, when you're new, you don't break the rules. When you're experienced and you have good intuition with your plants, I think you should have fun. And you can definitely add stuff there as long as it's not getting too stagnant. All right, so next one, number 12. At Nestor Adrian 4539, hey, is using perlite instead of rice husks an option? Thanks. Absolutely. People have used perlite forever in soil. I like the pumice because pumice, if you get it from a good mine where it's horticultural pumice and it was really blasted, it's full of little air pores and it floats in water. And when we get our pumice, about half floats and about half sinks. And that's really important to me because it adds air to the soil. Perlite is phenomenal at doing that. It'll all float. The problem is when you have 100% floaters, like perlite is, and it's easy to crush with your hands, it can go away. Our goal with BuildASoil was to design soil that you keep forever. You never discard. Whether it goes to the garden or kept in your grow room is based on what you might desire as a grower, but most people will keep their well-thought living organic soil forever, and it's based on those principles. That being said, we use a portion of rice hulls because they add silica, and we know that they are gonna break down over time, and they provide a little bit of structural integrity when the soil is brand new, and I like that. If you add perlite, it's gonna work great. In fact, we're experimenting with an autoflower recipe where we add a little perlite to help improve the aeration to make it slightly easier for new growers not to overwater. So you can do it. Just be aware, if you're using exclusively perlite, it's more like a potting soil than a living soil. It will rise to the top. It will crunch and break down pretty quickly. If you're adding it to some pumice, I think it'll work fine. And of course, if you're not keeping the soil forever, or you're willing to remix it later, the perlite will be okay. All right, just be careful. I like to moisten it if you're gonna use it. There's a lot of dust on it that you don't wanna breathe. At 2 Fish in the Garden. Thanks for asking a question. I like the name, At 2 Fish in the Garden. How do you feel about using RootWise on outdoor plants? Not necessary with natural world, or will it bring the terps to my outdoor? Oh my goodness. Yeah, I just assumed everyone knew that this is designed for outdoor use. This is designed for farm use. And then we bring it indoors because we're mimicking what we do outside. And so all the things BuildASoil is copying is what works outside. And then we bring it indoors. And everyone taught us for a long time, never do that. Don't do leaf litter indoors. Don't bring the soil indoors. Do the hydro. It can be messy. Don't use the compost. There's going to be, everything was don't do these organic practices indoors. And I'm thinking we do everything the opposite of that. We copy what goes outdoors and do it indoors. And the RootWise is phenomenal for outdoors. Not only that, the side benefit, instead of ruining your soil and having runoff, you're gonna have all these benefits from your grow just because you're applying it. So essentially, mycorrhizae, if you look it up, there's a few different types out there. If you get a general purpose one, or you get like one of these products that have been marketed to the cannabis community, they're typically gonna be for trees and for bushes, and they're mixed together. We get the type that's for annual flowering plants, as well as a couple others that manage moisture and a few things. And once you inoculate your soil there, it should persist and live as long as there's plant roots in there. And so a lot of people find that in an outdoor grow, you inoculate heavy to start and then very small amounts afterwards. You don't really have to inoculate near as much as like a sterile type grow. This stuff should persist. And so really a little bit goes a long way, and it's of huge benefit. So this poster behind me was when RootWise was testing a lot of these things. And I think 1 or 2 of the grows before this, there was loads of phosphorus added to test a 2-to-1 phosphorus P to K theory versus the biology. And when that happened on a full season plant growing over 10 pounds, which is hard enough to do, you can experience some disease and rot and fungal issues and problems. And what we did when I started BuildASoil was I was reducing the phosphorus and I was adding in the mycorrhizae and others. And the yield that he got with less phosphorus than usual was substantial, leveraging the mycorrhizae as well as the consortium that's in the RootWise. So if you can only pick one, I'd say the RootWise Microbe Complete. Otherwise, I love all three products, and outdoors, they are gonna do really, really well. Just don't be wasteful. If you have a large outdoor grow, follow the directions. What I would recommend is when you're done watering your plants and you've transplanted, you wanna do it immediately when roots are in the soil. Just mix up a small amount of RootWise and go put it in each root zone. You don't need to put 20 gallons of water with RootWise just because you're watering. When you're done watering, you can go then infect and inoculate that root zone. You don't have to be wasteful with how you use it, and it'll work really good outside. All right, that was the end of that section, and now we're gonna go to cover crops and biomass cycling. One more comment to pepper in there. This is from @Vitor Godet 8711. In terms of knowledge, this is the best YouTube channel ever. You always talk about the perfect scenario, but also about not optimal ones. Thank you, man. Thank you for commenting. I appreciate that. That just comes from us doing it every day, in the sense that since I started BuildASoil, we've had a grow going 24/7. I documented it on Instagram. You can go see a decade worth of Instagram posts. We've documented on YouTube. I don't know anyone else that does that, because you can fail so easily when you do it nonstop. That's why we also teach non-optimal stuff, because it fucking happens. And I appreciate you noticing and saying something, as a lot of people think we just do it perfect all the time, and we certainly don't. Next question, cover crops and biomass cycling from @Subtle1. What are the differences in biological composition? Thanks for asking the question. Nutrient profile, carbon to nitrogen ratio, microbial effects between chopping and dropping cover crops while they're still young versus when they've reached flowering. What advantages does each stage offer, and is there optimal timing depending on the needs of the cash crop? A couple things at play. I'm probably not gonna be able to answer this perfectly, in the sense that what I was taught. So Gil Carandang, back in the day, Patrick was running the website, doing all these micro fermentations, and they would teach that if you wanted to encourage and ferment something that would be good for your vegetative plants, you would go find vigorous, vegetatively growing plants, and you would take the tip of the growth where the most amount of hormonal activity was loaded, and it was reaching for the light and all the microbes that are present, and you would chop that and ferment that. But if you wanted to flower, you would go take flowers and chop that. And so early on, you can see a GoPro gardening video I was doing for YouTube in my kitchen at my old house. And I got a edible plants of the Rockies book. And I would go around my yard and I would identify all these amazing dynamic accumulators and edible plants. And I would take the fresh growing tips of them and I would chop them all up. And I would use that as part of my top dress. And I had some unbelievable results doing that. But I was always using it for like going into flower. And so I'd always be chopping up flowers and all those bits as well. So you can consider that, you can think about that. However, when it comes to the cover crop, I'm typically trying to get roots in the soil is my most important aspect. And so waiting until they fully flower and getting kind of a woody stalk where they clump up in the soil and are dropping pollen and everything, I usually don't go that far, but sometimes it happens. And so I'm not purposefully doing it because it takes a long time. But what happens is the carbon and nitrogen ratio widens, and the final dried material is mostly all carbon anyways in any of this. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, potassium, a few things. There's not much in the nutrient range that's stored in the plant. But for instance, if you grow a full season, we'll get straw out of that instead of just grass. And so that's where you get hay, we get the straw. And so that straw is really hard to break down. In fact, the corn farmers out here, when they have the corn stubble, it's so high in carbon that if they're doing like synthetic, they either have to burn it all, or if they till it in, they have to add extra nitrogen that year to balance it. So when it's young, it tends to just break down so quickly, kind of like how comfrey does. It's just so easy for the microbes to disassemble it and take that raw energy and reuse it. That's how I've used cover crop in the garden. There may be benefit to fully flowering and dropping it in there. When I have a crop going and the cover crop, some of it persists in flowers, it drops the seeds and it keeps the whole cycle going for free. And I really do like that. The other thing is if you have beneficial insects in there, they can thrive when the plants are growing off the pollen from your cover crop, and they can eat that. So there's benefits to having it there, but I feel like for all intent and purposes, for our growers that are just trying to get good results, I feel like there's probably not enough of a noticeable difference to put a lot of that to practice. It's best to do something though. And when you have the cover crop, I noticed my grows improving in health when I started doing that. And I don't know what some of that magic is. Some of it may not be as explainable as I'd like, that it fucking works. So I appreciate you asking. And if you have any input @Subtle1 to drop in here, I'd love to hear it. Okay, so training, trellis, and canopy management is the next section. And I've got 1, 2, 3, so 5 more. We're on question 15. Let's drop in one more comment. At Nutwaffle2913 says, I think I've watched every one of your videos for the last few years, and still, I either get some new bit of info or reminded about something I've forgotten every time. It's like having a buddy who's an expert grower walking you through the steps. Thanks again, Jeremy. Thank you for asking, honestly, because this is something that for whatever reason, I've not grown tired of. I'm passionate about this. I fucking love it. To me, it's like jiu-jitsu, disc golf, things that for whatever reason I nerd out on and I just don't get tired of. All this, I feel the same way. When people ask questions, I get to revisit the ideas in my mind, and they say when you teach, you learn the most. And so thank you for being a part of this. It's really helped me in my life as well. All right, so we're on to question 15. And this is at Beans to Greens. I love it. Thanks for asking the question. It says, looking good so far. I prefer trellis net with 3.5-inch squares. I'm able to better fine tune the training of the plants. I get it, all right? I've used some with smaller squares. Sometimes harvesting is a little bit harder through there, but sometimes it doesn't matter to you, right? If you just cut it. When I let it grow through and there's only a 3.5-inch square, sometimes I have to be very gentle to pull it so I don't like break it trying to go through the small square. So sometimes there's a trade-off, but I could see what you're saying. I just don't have easy access to it. I was spending money buying 3,000-foot rolls, and our guys would literally like walk out in the parking lot and they'd like measure and they'd be going back, and it just was a disaster trying to figure it out. I don't know how the big companies do it. They probably have some machine. But I'm not a plastic company, and so the trellis net we offer has a little bit bigger square because it's easily available and it's easy to unfold for a small grower, where some of them are like a knot when you get them, and it drives me freaking crazy. So if you have a recommendation on where you get that 3.5-inch square trellis, what brand it is, anything like that, I'd love to take a peek. Drop it in here. Thanks for telling us. Question 16. At Booterson 1564. Thanks for asking a question. Comparing pruning techniques in the battle tents would be cool for a future season, like i.e. supercropping versus topping, topping down one node versus topping 2 or 3. Heavy defoliation versus minimal and no defoliation. I'd love to do that. I've done all those experiments on my own over the years. I've been a part of arguments on like many of the grow forums where people were like, defoliation, oh, that's a solar panel, you can't do it. And others saying, strip every single one. And so it's pretty amazing how a lot of this stuff all works, but there's still heated debates on all sides. So I would have a blast. What's up, Dave? I would have a blast doing that. And I'm not opposed to that. I have more room. I could maybe set up another set of tents. I like doing the side-by-sides. And so I will consider it. Maybe other people can drop in here and see if they think that that's a good idea. Okay, next question, number 17, getting there. At Justin Bird 2012, thank you for asking a question. Just kidding, it's a comment. Plant tape for the stem breaks. I'm guessing this is when I showed the GMO where I over super cropped one of them, and it's fine. It's fully rebounded now. I don't use any plant tape. I'm sure it would help it sometimes, but when I was brand new, I would super crop and I'm like, oh my God, and I'd get duct tape and stuff, and like, I feel like it caused more harm than good. So I just leave it. It is what it is. If I snap it too far, I just remove it. But maybe you can chime in. Maybe it's helped you. Maybe there's a good plant tape that you think actually works. I'd consider it. I'm just trying to help people. Doesn't have to be my way every time. Okay, on to genetics and seeds. We got 2 questions left. I have one random comment left that I can drop in here, and so I'm going to do it. Last one, last positive comment at JWGrower81. Thanks for dropping a positive comment. It says, BuildASoil, bring in the masterclass every video 100. I appreciate that. I feel like I'm just teaching fundamentals. I'm not a teacher. I don't have a degree in this stuff. But honestly, when I'm researching something, that's what I look for. I look for practical application from someone who has results that I want. Many times when I see people speaking science, they're speaking from a white paper, not in vivo, not like in real life. And if you have both, that's the best, right? But I mentioned jiu-jitsu a lot because I only want to learn from a black belt or someone lower, someone better than me, right? Has results I want. And for me in jiu-jitsu, someone similar body size is very, very helpful. It helps me understand the way that they apply techniques for someone like me. And so when I'm looking at soil and other things, I'm like, dude, it'd be cool to have like the professor with the doctorate, but if he doesn't grow weed and doesn't apply, and I can't see any real world results, it'd be like me having the knowledge of every jiu-jitsu move, but never having applied it. That's the most important part when I'm learning something. And so just hearing you say that makes me feel great, even though I know there's probably people that are way smarter than me about this stuff. And the fact you keep coming back is really, really cool. Genetics and seeds, number 18 at Jerome McCarthy, 934. What's up? Thanks for asking a question. I've followed the BuildASoil way for the last 3 years, which I feel blessed to have found. I love that. A lot of people say they discovered BuildASoil, and that's because we don't do marketing. Even though I feel like we're marketing, it's just through this type of stuff, and I appreciate you for saying that. My question is, my EarthBoxes are at the point where they're overflowing and cannot mound anymore. What do we do to make room? I know we want a no-till, but I'm guessing we just take the top layer away a few inches. Thank you for everything you've taught me, loyal to the soil. Okay, no-till is like an idealistic philosophy. And what it comes from is not wanting to disrupt all this soil food web that's there. I also think it's been twisted out there by agriculture. You can research how people are doing no-till on like corn farm, and instead of tilling, they're just spraying more Roundup. And I'm just like, that's not fucking no-till. So within our living soil organic grower community, the no-till has often been nuanced into low-till, things like that, because they don't want to say like it's never not tilled. I just don't think that matters that much. The no-till philosophy of building up the organic matter and not disturbing all of that so your topsoil doesn't blow away, and using cover crop, it all still works. And in an EarthBox, we've got so much organic matter. We got all this good stuff going for us. We're not dealing with native land. The weakest link is that this thing's mounded up like crazy and we can't plant back into it. It's gonna be a problem. Scrape that shit off there. Just literally scrape all of it off to the point where you have a little bit of room down in the EarthBox again. And then from there, you can even dig out a little more and add a little fresh potting soil, or you can just take it right down to the final, to that top layer. Put all that in your worm bin or mix it into some other soil. It's fine, okay? Some people even start like a tub that they put a little bokashi in. We have the Kashi Gold, and they like break it down and stir it up and compost it or run it through the worm bin and then reuse it. So scrape it, plant back in, and then do a normal top dress on top. That's why I love the EarthBox. It works. In fact, when Alan taught me about the EarthBox, I did experiments where I literally put peat and pumice in the box and would just put nutrients in random places and cover it, and the plant would grow very well, despite the fact that I didn't mix it perfectly. Something about that EarthBox acts like a stomach. Scraping it, putting a new top dressing of complete organic, like craft blend, and then a little layer of compost, you're gonna be off to the races. And then because you remove the mound, as your plant gets bigger, you'll be able to mound hard again and keep the feeder roots going. Eventually, you may see benefit to just dumping the entire EarthBox out. It is a bit unique in that it's a slightly smaller container, and we really do kind of overdrive it with that mound. So I would say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and then saying like, no-till is completely out because I have to scrape the top and now I'm not a no-tiller. But also, don't be so hard on no-till that you let your grow decline. Toss that EarthBox, remix it. There's so many ways where you don't have to throw it away, but you can still have a better run from round to round. So hopefully that helps you. Number 19, oh, it looks like there's two more. There's one last 20 on quick tips. Okay, so number 19, at Grubby Mango. Would love a little series on making seeds that have something you guys would be down to do. Much love. We've done it. We showed you how to make seeds on the lower branches in your grow. I actually bred seeds that I then grew on another season. So go back, you'll see it. I made the, I think I took pollen from the Coots the One, and also from, I think, the Straw Nana cross with GMO or something, the Fruit by the Funk. But I made crosses with it and I showed you how to do it. In fact, I did just get a book. Might as well just grab it. Let me grab it. All right, I don't normally do this stuff on camera because I don't like to shout people out because sometimes I don't know who they are and it can backfire because we have a big channel, but whatever. I talked to this guy Joint and he's fucking awesome. We had a really good conversation. And he produced this book called Undeniable Heat, and it's all about breeding. And it's like a breeder's book, but it's in our kind of words. Like it's not some science book, but it's got the science in it. Like for instance, first book, Guard the Queen. And this is the Clone Custody Protocol. And like, I just like the way that he's written this book, and I think it's pretty cool. I think it's on Amazon. We're considering offering it here. I believe if we offer it, we'd probably do the set, and then it'll come with a pack of seeds. I don't really know. It's kind of out of my lane, but what I like is he's teaching something that I'm not an expert in and going really expert level on it. And so I myself would like to maybe go through his process as well for fun, and we'll document that when we do it, which would be a deeper seed making episode. And I promise, as we get deeper in these YouTubes, I'm gonna want to do it. And then the follow-up to that is he has this logbook that he released that basically has like the way that he teaches you to observe things as like a book and checklist, so you can write it all down and observe every single genotype. So cool shit, but I just thought I'd mention that since you asked about seeds. Quick tips and miscellaneous. Last question, we made it. 54 minutes, an hour FAQ video. I don't know how I've been talking this much, but I'm actually having fun. We haven't done it in a while, and I've got more like this coming. Please answer my question. Should I do the single FAQ videos as well as these, or just these? What do you think? Knowing my main goal is for people that have a question to find the answer. Sometimes it's harder when I have 20 questions in one video. Okay, so last one, question 20 for the first FAQ for season 8. Long time coming. Sorry it took so long. At 44 Mars, thank you for asking a question. What is a good technique to use when judging if a 25-gallon pot of soil needs to be watered? I do not have a moisture meter. Get a moisture meter. No, you don't have to. Here's my rule of thumb. If you go to the BuildASoil way, or sorry, the BuildASoil.com, and you go to education, I have a watering protocol that's listed in there. The rule of thumb is the 5 to 10% rule. So in a 25-gallon container, at most in one day, you'd give it 2.5 gallons, especially when it's in stretch. But when it's freshly transplanted and you've just potted up in there, it's better to do closer to the 1.25 gallons, which is the 5%. In fact, once things are growing slowly, a lot of times I'll do less than 5% and I'll test and see how it does. And so if your plant's growing really slow and you know you watered more than that 1.25 gallons, maybe closer to the 10%, and it's small, chances are you're overwatered. You can feel the size of it, the weight, by kind of grabbing the edges a little and seeing if it's heavy. You could slap the side and kind of see what it sounds like. You can put your fingers in there and dig around a little bit and see if it's moist. But typically, if it's a big plant that's fast growing, it's going to be harder to overwater. And if it's a small plant, it's going to be very easy to overwater. So all of that background information is what helps you make these decisions. The other thing is I like to water every 1 to 4 days when it's a brand new plant, and I like to water every 1 to 2 days when it's a fast growing plant. So if it's been 10 days since you watered, you might be underwatering. If it's been like a day and you watered heavy and you're just thinking, man, did they need more? Did it go through it? Judge by the size of your plant, feel around in there, and go by the look of the plant. In our book we're releasing next year, and in fact in a series I'm going to do very soon, we're going to be going over what overwatered looks like versus underwatered by purposefully doing it to plants. But sometimes they look similar, and so you're going to have to use some gut intuition on what's happened recently in the past to determine that. The other thing that I like is cover crop helps. So when you're growing a lot of cover crop, it helps drink the water, which means it's a lot less likely to overwater when things are just raging, and you can go off the appearance of the cover crop. And if that starts growing really slow, maybe you're overwatered. But underwatered is usually easier to identify. It's just that you'll know it's going to be a very light container, and it could actually have tip burn, because as the water goes out, whatever soluble nutrients are left get kind of elevated in that little bit of water, where when it's overwatered, it's like slow, and the color, like the leaves get a little thinner and droopy, and the speed's not there. And so you might notice that they're getting kind of locked out of nutrient, but not burned by it. And that's when you're overwatering. And it can be exacerbated because when you're overwatering and you crank the lights up, it can make them act burnt, but it's more from the light because they're not able to get nutrients because the water logging has happened and the air is out of the soil. So consider those things. We are in our book going to put a troubleshooting section that should help you ask yourself these questions to self-diagnose and troubleshoot. But it's not released yet because I'm working on it, and we get lots of questions to our customer service. I'd like them to have the exact same troubleshooting guide and questions to ask so that we can all do a better job helping each other. And I'm hoping many of you will share it when it comes out. So thank you for adding fuel to my fire and considering these things as I'm working on writing the book. I really appreciate everyone who asked a question here. Thank you so much for following along. If you haven't done so already, if you like this type of stuff, please, we're not monetized on YouTube. So the people supporting this are our Patreon members. They pay, I don't have a lot of activity going on there, and they pay a very small amount, and it literally pays for all the editing so that I can justify our small business still running these FAQ and YouTube videos as a big part of my day. And it means the world. So I really appreciate you. But if you're not gonna do that, that's totally fine. Just hit that subscribe button. As we get more followers, it starts to change the algorithm a little bit. Some of our videos are showed. It really helps our small business, and it means the world. Otherwise, as usual, thank you so much. Tell your friends about this stuff. Like, subscribe, comment on here if you want to get one of your questions on an FAQ video. And until next time, stay loyal to the soil, and I'll see you on the next BuildASoil video.